Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Greg Capullo Day. We've moved on from Quasar to, just like Greg Capullo has, on to X-Force. This is issue number 16, cover dated November 1992. Unfortunately, I don't own issues 14 and 15 anymore. Lost in a purge back in the day, long time ago. So we're going to start with issue number 16 here, but no matter, because basically the kind of style that we were seeing from him in issues 14 and 15 is what we're seeing here in issue number 16. Moving on from Quasar to X-Force. Definitely upping the ante on that Wildstorm West Coast Scott Williams kind of sheen hatching look from the early 90s, but still keeping with the dynamism and movement that we know from Greg Capullo in his artwork, as this cover can attest to. Every character really dynamic, moving, and again, all covered up in that West Coast sheen. This is also, if you look at this cover, you'll see, I've talked about before how Greg Capullo has similarities to, let's say, John Romita Jr. I see a bit of that in his Gambit. Then there's the aspect where his art sometimes looks like the Kubert brothers, which I see a whole bunch on this page, with the female figures, it seems, maybe more so than the male, but yeah, pretty dynamic cover here. This is Executioner's Song Part 4. I'm not going to go through the whole Executioner's Song saga. A huge crossover issue. You know, we've got characters from X-Men, X-Force, and X-Factor featured here, which is always fun, at least visually, and Capullo really sinks his teeth into this one, I think, and I'll go through the comic to show you exactly what I mean. Yeah, so right away, this whole aesthetic here, like I said, it feels like a bit of that Jim Lee West Coast stuff, but filtered through the Kubert brothers. It's a little dirtier, it's a little bit gritty. There's just something to it that screams, you know, how the Kuberts kind of interpreted Jim Lee's stuff. It seems like Greg Capullo kind of followed a similar path. Really cool double page spread here. You can see the Jim Lee style, Rob Liefeld style inking too, even. Yeah, even some Rob Liefeld style stuff in here for sure. Aesthetically, these lines on the thigh, right? This type of hatching, really wide hatching, I guess he got from Rob Liefeld. This almost could be like a Jim Lee facial figure for Gambit here. Pretty cool splash overall. The colors in this era for X-Men are kind of garish. I don't know. They don't quite work for me as much as maybe when I was a kid. Other comics they do, but like other Marvel comics from this period, the colors are a little bit off-putting here. So Fabian Niciezi is the writer. I think that's how you say that. Greg Capullo, penciler, and Harry Candelario was the inker. So coming over from Quasar as well, but definitely a shift in the art. You know, it was already kind of going in that direction, but everything feels like thicker and more metallic, like, and more hatching sheen everywhere. Chris Iliopoulos letter and Joe Rose's colorist. I think these are the guys who did the first Savage Dragon issue. I'm not sure. So yeah, I'm kind of used to seeing Cannonball right at the end of the Rob Liefeld run, and like maybe the first few issues. I think Mark Pacella drew a few before Capullo did, and he just got really buff all of a sudden. Even Rob Liefeld would draw him kind of as more of a slightly skinnier frame than the other characters. Even McFarlane kind of played on that too in that famous Spider-Man number 16 issue. But yeah, I don't remember him being that buff. Maybe it's now because he's realized he's an external. If that was the plot line going around that time with Rob Liefeld stuff, Mark Pacella's stuff, like in that, you know, nebulous in-between period on X-Force. And I don't think it ever really went anywhere eventually. But that's what was going on around this time. So maybe that's to reflect the fact that he's an eternal or external or something like that. I think it's an external because the Eternals already exist, and he, you know, is can live forever or something. Anyways, correct me on that in the comments if I'm saying something wrong. But yeah, let's like cool dynamic shot here, lots of action, and this whole double spread. I mean, they're single pages, but just the whole movement of, if you just open up these pages and look at all this, is super awesome, and it's all Greg Capullo. So he's in some of the shots. It's weird because, you know, you almost get like a Mike Mignola aesthetic down here, and all sorts of like inspirations from that period. Sometimes he looks like Silvestri a little bit, like Boom Boom here. There's something to Silvestri about that. Just integrating all the best kind of styles, I guess. And you could still see a bit of those influences here, but Greg Capullo, I think, is just versatile enough to just be talented enough to draw in that style. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's what he's doing here. And, you know, since he knows it's X-Force and Rob Liefeld was the previous artist, I just feel like he can just go ham and, you know, do some crazy stuff and crazy foreshortening, crazy, you know, line hatching and stuff. But it all works better somehow. And like he just knows how to apply it better, or at this point has learned to. looks great. His Wolverine is pretty savage, kind of different from the modern stuff that we saw recently with Wolverine's Revenge. Definitely more of an Art Adams, like body type, I guess I would say, in this shot here, at least to me. And then these pages here are what kind of, to me, look a lot like the Andy Kubert stuff. And I think Andy Kubert was doing some Uncanny X-Men issues by this point, or Adam Kubert, let's just say the Kubert brothers. And it's like, you know, in a way, Greg Capullo was really blending well into that. If you took this out of context and told me this was like maybe Andy Kubert, I probably would have believed you. Because I feel like this shot particularly, there's just something really akin to his style there that, you know, I might not pick up that it's Greg Capullo. Something about the inking too, though, like that's not completely West Coast. When Andy Kubert, like I said, and those guys jumped on, they started with that look, but they kind of, you know, made it their own and made it more illustrative rather than, you know, just the wide shapes they would leave sometimes that kind of don't make sense. They kind of fine-tuned it, and slowly over these issues, it seems like that's what Greg Capullo is doing. It's just wild stuff, man. Like that's, you know, Dan Panosian was doing stuff like this back in the day. But the figures are all so solid, right? So like this bit of hatching works really well. Just this one's odd, but I guess, again, that's the aesthetic that was working for them at that time, right? Starting to see more of a looseness in it, like that's almost akin to some of his later Spawn stuff, like a little cartoonier. Even like here, this feels a little stiff with Quicksilver, and kind of reminds me more of his run on Quasar and that kind of stuff. But then there are other shots here, like very fluid, you know, great movement. Even the Beast here in his kind of diminished form is pretty cool, and you know, he's selling it through the body proportions being really kind of, you know, skinny and eaten away. And as for the storyline here, just, you know, I couldn't be asked. Again, I'm not very interested in Executioner Song, so just an art critique is what you're going to get with this one. That's a great shot of Mr. Sinister. I mean, the staging, the composition is great. And then just some insane wide open hatching here where it's almost like they're making fun of that style, I feel like, in some shots. That's kind of what it boils down to. Bishop, who was the, you know, the heir to Cable, I guess, at some point, right? He's supposed to be the coolest character created after Cable, created by Whilce Portacio, I think. Or pretty sure he did, yeah. You know, Capullo doing an awesome version of a Rob Liefeld gun, because it actually, you know, makes sense, I guess I would say, or it looks reasonably like a facsimile of a gun that's futuristic and could work. Looks great. I have to assume this has something to do, like Bishop shoots Mr. Sinister in the head. We got a great shot of Bishop here up close. Bit of the John Romita Jr. there. This is very Kubert-like to me. And then, yeah, great shot of, you know, T2 ripoff here with Mr. Sinister and having that hole in his head there. And then again, some of the things that lead me to believe that Greg Capullo's, you know, having fun with this one and kind of kidding around a lot and almost doing a parody of Rob Liefeld stuff, or at least those themes and those types of characters, is, you know, pretty cool to see his whole arsenal and all these huge different types of guns that he's got. But to see him then walk away here in like what is the most extremist of Cable gear I've ever seen, up to this point at least, shoulder pads, gloves, gauntlets, right, guns everywhere. He's literally got 4 straps here for these extra guns on his back. I gotta think that that's Greg Capullo taking the piss a little bit there. And it's hilarious and really fun, and great drawing too. This is a pretty cool shot. Pretty different style hatching, I think, than Jim Lee. Like, this kind of stands out a little bit. Again, maybe a little bit more John Romita Jr. like, but I think it works really well. It's pretty cool. And it gives that sense of uplighting, I guess, they're trying to get from whatever they're walking on here. Almost like in Space Odyssey 2001, the light's coming out of the floor. I feel like that's what they're going for there. And now, of course, the big baddie of Executioner Song, Strife, who's a clone of Cable, or Cable's a clone of him, who knows. The most impossible costume in comics that eventually got copied with every Image villain ever, pretty much riffing on the Strife look. Yeah, the Wolverine Greg Capullo's doing here. Not quite sure. I guess it's kind of, he's got to do the 90s version, and I understand why he's doing it this way. But like even this shot here has, it's a far away shot, has a bit more character. This is feels a little stiff, or like let's do the Jim Lee pose, I guess. It's got that kind of vibe. Everywhere else, the storytelling is really great. The emotions in the characters' faces. You know, still doing the 90s gritted teeth, but probably, I think, right here, at least a better version of it. What a great up-close shot here of the eyes. Great, moody kind of shot of multiple men here. Multiple man in his multiple versions. All kind of slightly highlighted and just full silhouette everywhere else. Looks cool. Almost a Joe Quesada kind of vibe there. Gotta think he's looking at that guy too, because he's a great composer. And yeah, so it ends with Cannonball being handcuffed here, but I have to assume, what was that issue? I think it was Youngblood number 0. Is that out yet? Because it definitely feels like, you know, those are Rob Liefeld type handcuffs where Greg Capullo, again, maybe taking the piss and having a bit of a laugh, but then adding the extra bit of complicated technology here to at least make it interesting. I definitely think it's a cool interpretation of that idea, and I feel like maybe that's where he got it from. Great staging in that image too, like the smoke in the foreground, him, the multiple man versions, all back here again, really cool. They do the hatching, you know, fill that in black, and that's even more dramatic, but some good stuff here from Greg Capullo for sure. And again, the exaggerated faces, proportions and stuff, you know, they're definitely going for, you know, some sort of consistency in the look of the art, since all the Image guys have left all these popular Marvel titles. All right, Greg Capullo, more than happy to fill in, and eventually we'll move on to Image on its best-selling title, I think, pretty much consistently, at least in the beginning years. That is it today, guys, for my Greg Capullo review, X-Force issue number 16. If you're still watching and you are subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. And if you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you, and it really helps the channel out. It helps us grow, helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone out there, thanks again for watching. Have yourselves an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.